On their wedding anniversary, Caleb Thorne received an anonymous text message. The photo showed his wife, Julia, playing a drunken party game with her college ex, Connor Reed, their lips a hair's breadth from touching. The roar of laughter from the partygoers in the background stabbed at his eyes. Caleb had taken the afternoon off. It was his and Julia's first anniversary. Not some earth-shattering milestone, but he felt it deserved a little ceremony. It took him 2 bakeries to track down the specific tiramisu from Bellini's, the little Italian place she loved. It was small, packaged in an elegant festive box. Then he swung by the floors for a dozen champagne roses, their creamy blush color, exactly the kind of understated shade Julia preferred. He imagined her walking through the door after work, seeing it all, her face breaking into that look she got. A little flash of surprise she'd immediately try to suppress. The thought made the corners of his mouth twitch upward. He placed the cake carefully in the refrigerator, found a simple vase for the roses, and set them on the living room coffee table. Sunlight slanted through the window, catching the petals, filling the air with a lazy, sweet scent. He leaned back on the sofa, debating whether to take her out for a fancy dinner or show off his own skills in the kitchen. His phone was on the cushion next to him, screen dark. Bees his tea. The phone vibrated, the screen lighting up. Not a call. A text with a picture message. Caleb picked it up casually, his thumbs swiping it open. An unknown number. The image was slow to load. His mind was still on which restaurant to book as his finger tapped the screen. A photograph exploded into view like a bucket of ice water to the face, flash freezing his thoughts, his blood, everything. The background was a chaotic mess, the light dim and glaring, the signature cheap neon ambience of a private karaoke room. A crowd of people was circled up, their faces flushed with alcohol and the kind of mob excitement that loves a spectacle. The focus was on the 2 people in the center. His wife, Julia, wearing a tight, black slip dress he'd never seen before, her skin looking shockingly white against it. A blush high on her cheeks, her eyes hazy. She clearly had a lot to drink. Her head was tilted slightly, a thin pretzel stick held between her lips. Across from her, standing uncomfortably close, was a man. Caleb recognized the face, though he'd only seen it in old photos. Connor Reed, Julia's epic college love, the one who'd supposedly taken half her soul with him when they broke up. Connor was biting the other end of the pretzel stick, his body leaning in, his lips maybe a fingernail's width from Julia's. The photo was taken from a sharp, damning angle, perfectly capturing the aggressive smirk in Connor's eyes and the look on Julia's face. A mixture of alcohol, shyness, and something else. A kind of reckless abandon Caleb had never, ever seen when she was with him. The blurred faces in the background were all grinning, silently screaming, "Kiss, kiss, kiss." Time stretched, thick and suffocating. Caleb could hear the blood roaring in his ears, his temples throbbing. Each heartbeat landed like a sledgehammer against his ribs. He stared at the screen, unblinking, as if he could burn a hole right through the glass, incinerate the 2 piercing figures in the frame. His fingers tightened unconsciously, his knuckles turning white, making a faint cracking sound. The scent of the champagne roses, so carefully chosen, now coiled in his nostrils, sickeningly sweet, mixing with the acid churning in his stomach. Fuck! A low, ragged snarl finally tore from his throat, dry as sandpaper. He flung his arm back. The phone flew, a short, sharp arc, and smashed against the cold, white wall opposite. Crack! The screen spiderwebbed, the obscene image distorting in the fissures before the screen died, going black. The loud smack echoed in the suddenly dead-silent living room, making the air hum. Caleb stood panting, his chest heaving. He was a caged animal, cornered and provoked, but pinned to the spot. The small gash the phone left on the wall was an ugly scar. Slowly, so slowly, he turned his head. His gaze swept over the offending roses on the coffee table, over the refrigerator hiding the uneaten cake, and finally landed on the closed door to his study. Behind that door was his other self, a Caleb Thorne that Julia had never truly known. He didn't look at the shattered phone on the floor. He didn't touch the flowers or the cake. He walked, his steps heavy as lead, toward the study. He twisted the knob, stepped inside, and gently pulled the door shut behind him, sealing himself off from the world that had just imploded. The study was Spartan, a desk, a bookshelf. Caleb pulled open the bottommost, locked drawer of his desk without a moment's hesitation. He took out a small, black metal box, unmarked, that looked like an old external hard drive. On its side was a nearly invisible fingerprint scanner. He pressed his thumb to it. After a soft beep, a seam on the top of the box slid open. There was no hard drive inside, only a uniquely shaped metal key. He took the key and walked to the built-in bookshelf against the wall. He knelt, his fingers searching along the bottom shelf on the inner edge of the baseboard. He found a tiny, almost imperceptible keyhole. He inserted the key and gave it a soft turn. Click! An almost inaudible mechanical sound. Beside the bookshelf, a section of what looked like a solid wall slid open, revealing a narrow slit, a hidden door. Behind it was a space just large enough for one person to stand, like a small walk-in vault. Embedded in the wall was a safe with a dual fingerprint and retinal scanner. Caleb stepped forward. The scanner's red light washed over his eye as he pressed his thumb to the pad. Access granted, a cool, electronic female voice murmured. The safe's heavy metal door swung open silently. Inside, there were no bundles of cash, no gleaming gold bars, just several thick, sealed manila envelopes, each one heavy. On the very top, looking entirely out of place, sat a small, deep blue velvet jewelry box. Caleb's gaze passed over the files and settled on the velvet box. He reached in and took it out. He opened it. It wasn't jewelry. It was two small, nondescript silver flash drives. He picked one of them up. The cold metal touch spread up his fingertips like a dormant viper. He clenched his fist around it, his knuckles whitening again, as if he could crush the tiny object to dust. The study was utterly silent, save for his own ragged, suppressed breathing. The noise of the city outside was completely shut out. He stared at the flash drive in his palm, but it was as if he were seeing through it, seeing that glaring photograph, Julia's hazy eyes, Connor Reed's triumphant smirk. A long time passed, so long it felt like time itself had frozen. Finally, Caleb slowly, as if using every last ounce of his strength, lifted his head and stared at the empty wall in front of him. His face was a blank, hard mask, but in the depths of his eyes, a cold, terrifying fire was burning. His lips moved, forming two words, so quiet they were almost a sigh, yet carrying the finality of a guillotine's fall. Game on. The days that followed felt like they were on fast forward, and at the same time, like slogging through a thick swamp. On the surface, everything was calm, but a vicious undertow was pulling everything apart. Julia felt like something was wrong, but she couldn't put her finger on it. Ever since that college reunion, Caleb's attitude had become subtle. He wasn't giving her the cold shoulder, not exactly. On the contrary, he seemed perfectly normal. He still made a simple breakfast in the morning. When he got home from work, if Julia was there, he'd eat dinner with her, make small talk about their jobs. He even asked her on the weekend if she wanted to see a movie or check out the new mall. But Julia knew something was off. When his eyes met hers, it was like looking through a thick sheet of frosted glass. All emotion was filtered out, leaving behind only a hollow, temperatureless calm. Several times, Julia wanted to talk to him about the reunion, to explain that the game was just a stupid, drunken dare, that it meant nothing. She'd even secretly deleted the friend request Connor had sent her on Facebook that night. But every time the words reached her lips, she'd look at Caleb's impassive face, listen to his normal tone asking, "Tired from work today?" Or, "What do you feel like for dinner?" And she couldn't bring herself to say it. It felt like bringing it up would shatter some fragile equilibrium, exposing something she was terrified to confront. She told herself she was just being sensitive. Caleb had never been a passionate, fiery person. After a year of marriage, the honeymoon phase fades, life settles into a routine. That was normal. And the picture? She'd wondered later, who would be so malicious as to send it to him? But Caleb never mentioned it, so she didn't dare step on that landmine. Maybe he didn't care, or maybe he trusted her. The thought gave her a tiny sliver of peace. This Saturday, Julia had the day off. She met her best friend, Chloe, to get their hair done, hoping a new look might lift her spirits. She came out of the salon feeling refreshed, the new chestnut brown highlights making her skin glow. They wandered through the mall, and a new season dress caught Julia's eye. It was elegantly cut, in a hazy blue she loved. "Try it on, Jules. It would look amazing on you," Chloe urged. Tempted, Julia took the dress into the fitting room. Coming out, she looked in the mirror. It was a perfect fit, chic and flattering. Satisfied, she instinctively pulled out her phone to use Apple Pay. "Beep. I'm sorry, insufficient funds," the cashier said with professional softness. "Huh?" Julia froze, thinking she must have misheard. Her debit card was linked to her account. She'd just gotten paid 2 days ago, over $10,000. How could a $200 dress be a problem? "That can't be right," she muttered, trying the transaction again. Beep. Insufficient funds. The cold, digital rejection was like a needle prick. Julia's cheeks grew hot with embarrassment. She quickly opened her banking app to check. When the page loaded, she stared at the number, her eyes widening. Balance, $3.72. How is that possible? She remembered it clearly. Her direct deposit had hit the day before yesterday. $13,000. Her fingers trembling, she tapped on her transaction history. At the top of the list, a glaring entry jumped out at her. Transaction type fund transfer transaction amount $13,200. 00 transaction time, yesterday, 2:37:22 p.m. recipient account C. Thorn, ACCT. Ending 7789. Memo consolidated household assets. Consolidated household assets? Transferred to Caleb. Julia's mind went blank with a deafening roar. He had transferred her entire paycheck out of her account without a word. What did this mean? Jules? What's wrong? Chloe asked, noticing her friend's pale face. In nothing. Julia stammered, snapping back to reality. She forced a strained smile, shoving her phone back in her purse like it was a hot coal. Chloe, this dress. I don't think the color is right for me after all. Let's just go get some coffee instead. Her voice was thin and reedy. Chloe gave her a suspicious look, noting her pallor and obvious panic, but didn't press. Okay, let's hit the cafe downstairs. Sitting in the coffee shop, Julia clutched a hot latte, but her fingertips were ice cold. Her mind was a chaotic mess of the transfer record and Caleb's unervingly calm face. Why would he do this? Did he need money? Impossible. He earned far more than she did. Was he punishing her for that picture? But he hadn't said a single word. A chill crept up from the soles of her feet. She thought of Caleb's distant eyes lately, his seemingly normal but utterly cold words. This wasn't the slightly awkward but completely devoted Caleb she knew. This calm was the suffocating stillness before a hurricane. She couldn't sit still. Chloe, I just remembered I have something urgent to do at home. I have to go. She grabbed her bag and practically fled. She drove home in a daze. After parking, she took a few deep breaths, trying to compose herself. She had to ask him. She had to get answers. Caleb should be home today. The elevator rose smoothly. At her apartment door, Julia habitually reached into her purse for her keys. Her fingers fumbled around, but she couldn't find the familiar jingle of her keyring. Her heart dropped. She dumped the entire contents of her purse onto the doormat. Lipstick, compact, tissues, a coin purse. But no house keys. That was weird. She'd used them that morning. Did she drop them at the salon? The mall? Julia frowned, the unease tightening in her gut. She raised her hand and pressed the doorbell. Ding dong, ding dong. The crisp chime echoed in the empty hallway. She waited a few seconds. No response. She pressed it again. Ding dong, ding dong. Still nothing. Was no one home? Impossible. It was Saturday, and Caleb hadn't said he was going out. Annoyed, Julia pulled out her phone and called him directly. The line rang, a monotonous brarring. Brarring. It rang 7 or 8 times. Just as she thought it would go to voicemail, he picked up. Hello. Caleb's voice came through, the background perfectly quiet. He wasn't outside. Caleb, where are you? I'm at the door. I think I lost my keys. I can't get in. You have to come back. Julia spoke in a rush, her anxiety bubbling over. There were 2 seconds of silence on the other end. In that 2-second void, Julia's heart leaped in her throat. I'm home, Caleb said, his voice flat, devoid of any emotion. You're home. Julia was stunned. Then a wave of anger washed over her. If you're home, why didn't you open the door? I've been ringing the bell forever. Didn't you hear it? I heard it, he replied, his tone still short and calm. Then why? Julia's words caught in her throat. A horrifying, absurd thought shot through her mind, making her entire body go cold. Her knuckles turned white as she gripped the phone, her voice trembling with fear and rage. What? What do you mean? Caleb, what do you mean? Another few seconds of silence. Then, Caleb's voice came through the receiver, as clear and cold as a poison-tipped needle, stabbing directly into her ear. It means I changed the locks. Julia, this isn't your home anymore. What the hell are you talking about? Julia screamed into the phone, her voice cracking with shock and panic, echoing shrilly in the silent hallway. Caleb, are you insane? Open the door. Let me in. The other end was silent. A suffocating, crushing silence. A few seconds later, the line went dead. He'd hung up. Julia felt like her bones had been removed. Her back hit the cold steel of the apartment door with a dull thud. She couldn't believe what she'd just heard. Change the locks. Not her home anymore. All because of that damn picture. He wouldn't even give her a chance to explain. A tidal wave of absurdity and terror seized her, making her vision swim. Open the door. Caleb, you bastard. Come out here and explain yourself, she shrieked, pounding on the door with her fists, kicking it with her feet. The expensive security door echoed with heavy thuds that made her hands ache, but didn't budge an inch. What's all the racket? It's the middle of the day. Can a guy get some rest? The door to the neighboring apartment flew open. A middle-aged man in pajamas with messy hair poked his head out, his face a mask of fury. Julia froze, as if she'd been stripped naked in public. A tidal wave of shame washed over her. She opened her mouth to apologize, but her throat was clogged. Not a single word coming out, only ragged, desperate gasps. The neighbor shot her a disgusted look and slammed his door shut. The hallway returned to a dead silence. Julia leaned against the cold door, her body trembling. Rage and fear twisted around her heart like two icy serpents, squeezing tighter and tighter. She couldn't stay here. It was too humiliating. She scrambled to shove her scattered belongings back in her purse and practically stumbled toward the elevator. The descending numbers on the display seemed to mock her pathetic state. She burst out of the lobby and into the bright afternoon sun, but felt no warmth, only a bone-deep chill. Her phone buzzed in her purse. It was Chloe. "Hello. Jules, are you home? What happened? You sounded awful." Hearing her friend's concerned voice, Julia's carefully constructed composure shattered. Tears streamed down her face. "Chloe, stop. Caleb, he changed the locks. He said it's not my home anymore. He kicked me out. Stop," she babbled, weeping uncontrollably. "What?" Chloe's voice shot up, full of disbelief. "On what grounds? Because of that stupid picture? Jules, don't panic, don't cry. Where are you right now? I'm coming to get you. I'm downstairs, at the entrance to the complex." Julia choked out, feeling like a lost child. "Okay, stay right there, don't move. I'm on my way," Chloe said decisively and hung up. Julia clutched her purse, standing aimlessly in the shade of a tree at the complex gate, watching the cars go by. A massive sense of helplessness drowned her. She was homeless, all because of a photo from a party game that, in her mind, was completely harmless. How could Caleb be so cruel? Less than 20 minutes later, Chloe's little red VW Polo screeched to a halt in front of her. Chloe jumped out and threw her arms around the trembling Julia. It's okay, I'm here now." Chloe patted her back, her voice a mix of sympathy and fury. "That Caleb, he seems so mild-mannered, but he's a vicious bastard. Come on, let's go to my place first. We're going to figure out what the hell he thinks he's doing." Like she was grabbing a lifeline, Julia let Chloe guide her into the car. Back at Chloe's studio apartment, Julia's emotions had stabilized slightly, but her face was still pale and her eyes were red and swollen. Chloe handed her a cup of hot water and sat across from her, frowning. "Jules, what is going on? All this over that game at the reunion? Is he serious? What century is this? And you said it was just everyone fooling around, right?" "I don't know," Julia said, her voice hoarse, clutching the warm cup for its meager comfort. "There was no warning at all. Today, when I went to buy that dress, I found out he'd transferred all the money from my account. And then when I got home, the humiliation of being locked out brought fresh tears to her eyes." "He took your money too?" Chloe gasped. "He planned this. He's trying to cut you off completely. No, we can't let this happen. That's marital property. What right does he have? Let's go, we're going back there right now. Who does he think he is, some kind of king?" Chloe, ever the hothead, was already pulling Julia to her feet. "No, Chloe, don't." Julia shrank back. She remembered Caleb's icy tone on the phone, the unmoving door. A profound fear overcame her anger. He's like a different person right now. It's terrifying. Let's talk to the building manager first. Maybe they can help." Chloe sighed, looking at her friend's frightened state. "Fine, the manager it is. He had to have reported a lock change to them, right? I refuse to believe this." They drove back to the complex, this time heading straight for the management office. The manager was a kind-faced man in his 40s. Seeing the two anxious women, especially Julia's tear-stained face, he stood up immediately. "Ladies, can I help you with something?" "Hello, sir." Chloe took the lead, keeping her voice as steady as possible. "This is Ms. Julia Vance, the owner of Unit 1502 in Building 8. I'm her friend. The thing is, she came home today and found she couldn't open her door. It seems her husband changed the locks, and he won't let her in. We wanted to ask if you received any notice about this, or if you could help us contact her husband, Caleb Thorne." The moment he heard Building 8, Unit 1502, the manager's expression shifted, becoming strange, even tinged with a flicker of pity. He looked from Julia to Chloe, hesitated, then turned and unlocked a file cabinet. He pulled out a manila envelope stamped with a courthouse seal. "Ms. Vance," the manager said, his voice hesitant. This was just delivered this morning. It's a court summons and related enforcement documents." He handed the envelope to her. Julia's heart plummeted. Her fingers trembled as she took the heavy envelope. She tore it open and pulled out the papers inside. On top was the bright red seal of the district court, and below it, a bold, black headline. Civil Restraining Order Case. Ex parte application for prejudgment asset freeze applicant. Caleb Thorne responded. Julia Vance. Her eyes flew over the dense legal jargon, feeling like she was being licked by a cold snake, finally landing on the key phrases at the end of the document. IT is hereby ordered that the funds in the amount of $13,200.00 in the respondent Julia Vance's name at Federal Credit Union, account ending in XXXX, be immediately frozen. That a lien be immediately placed on the real property registered to the respondent Julia Vance, located at address, Building 8, Unit 1502, Property ID, XXXXXXX, prohibiting any transfer, mortgage, or other form of disposal. There was more about restricting her from high-cost spending, restricting her from leaving the country. Each phrase was a hammer blow, making her dizzy, unsteady on her feet. She clutched the papers, her knuckles white, the thin pages groaning under the pressure. Frozen accounts? A lien on the property? An ex parte asset freeze? Caleb had gone to court. What did he think she was? Some kind of debtor who might flee with the assets? An enemy? Ms. Vance, are you all right? The manager looked at Julia's face, which had turned white as a sheet. He looked pained, but had to add, according to this order, the property is now under a legal freeze. Besides the applicant, Mr. Thorne, no one else is permitted to reside there for the time being. Chloe had seen the documents too and was shaking with rage. You can't do this. This is marital property. This is malicious prosecution. Julia will sue him. We'll get a lawyer. But Julia didn't seem to hear her. All her strength had been drained by those pages. Even her anger felt pale and weak. She finally understood what Caleb had meant by game on. This wasn't a fit of pique. This was a carefully planned, meticulously executed assassination. He hadn't just changed the locks. He had weaponized the law, completely stripping her of her right to go home, nailing her to a cross as someone who might infringe upon his property. She lifted her head, her unfocused gaze drifting over the manager's sympathetic face, her friend's furious one, and finally landing back on the cold court order. An immense, bone-deep chill of despair spread from her heart to her limbs, making her teeth chatter. So this is what it felt like to be stabbed in the back by the person you trusted most. So this is how, in an instant, a home could become impossibly far away. Chloe. Her voice was as dry as sandpaper. Let's go. She didn't know how Chloe managed to get her out of the management office. The sun was still blinding, but she felt no warmth. Her phone vibrated in her purse again. The name flashing on the screen was one that was once so familiar, but now plunged her into an icy abyss. Caleb Thorne. Julia stared at the name, her body shaking uncontrollably, a profound fear seizing her throat. Chloe saw it, snatched the phone, put it on speaker, and answered with a roar. Caleb, are you even human? Let me talk to Julia. Caleb's icy voice cut her off, without a ripple of emotion. Chloe was about to curse him out, but Julia took a sharp breath, as if summoning all her remaining strength, and took the phone back. She had to face this. There was no escape. Caleb, her voice was a wreck. What? What do you want? On the other end, Caleb seemed to let out a low laugh, a sound that traveled through the airwaves with a terrifying chill. What do I want? He repeated slowly, each word crystal clear, like ice pellets hitting pavement. I'm just taking back what's mine. And, by the way, reminding you of your place. He paused, his tone dropping to absolute zero, carrying the cold finality of a judge's sentence. You got the court papers, didn't you? Julia, from today on, that condo has nothing to do with you. And that little bit of money in your account, you can't touch it. Oh, right, he added, as if suddenly remembering something, his voice laced with a cruel, deliberate reminder. That bit of cash you have on you? Spend it wisely. After all, I don't see you holding on to that job of yours for much longer. As for tonight, his voice grew even colder, announcing each word with stark clarity. You're sleeping on the street. The line went dead, a dial tone that severed Julia's last shred of hope. She stood there, phone in hand, at the busy entrance to the complex. The sun was high in the sky, but she felt like she was in the dead of a bleak winter, frozen from the outside in, right down her marrow. Nowhere to go, no money, and her job on the line. He really was going to drive her to her grave. Chloe's small studio apartment became Julia's temporary shelter. The tiny space was cluttered with Chloe's belongings, leaving Julia to curl up on the living room sofa under a thin blanket. Outside, The city lights flickered, reflecting in her vacant eyes, but bringing no light in. The cold court order sat on the coffee table like a branding iron, too hot to touch. Caleb's final pronouncement, "You're sleeping on the street," echoed in her mind. She couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Caleb's emotionless face, heard his cruel voice on the phone. She couldn't just sit here and wait for the end. She shot up, fumbling for her phone in the dark. Its faint glow illuminated her pale face. She needed a lawyer. She had to fight back. This was malicious. It was financial abuse. She would sue him. She frantically Googled keywords: divorce lawyer, hiding marital assets, challenging an asset freeze. The screen filled with ads for law firms and legal advice articles. She clicked on a few that looked professional and, with a trembling finger, dialed the first consultation number. "Hello, you've reached the law offices of Miller and Associates. How can I help you?" A young woman's formulaic voice answered. "Hello, I need to consult about a divorce and property dispute." Julia's voice was hoarse and raspy. "My husband, he took my entire paycheck without my consent, and he got a court order to freeze our condo and my bank account. He's—" "Ma'am, please calm down." The voice interrupted, still professionally smooth. "What was the exact amount your husband transferred? Do you have proof, like a bank statement? And regarding the property freeze, what was the court's reasoning? What grounds did your husband state for the prejudgment motion?" "He took over $13,000. I have a bank record. The condo. We bought it after we got married. It's joint property." His reason. Julia's words caught in her throat, another chill running down her spine. He might have used a picture from a party where I was playing a game with someone else." The line went quiet for a few seconds. When the formulaic voice returned, its tone had subtly shifted, becoming more distant. "Ma'am, to file for a prejudgment asset freeze, the applicant needs to provide preliminary evidence showing a risk of asset transfer. If he provided a reasonable argument and some evidence, the court will often grant it. As for the photo, that could be presented as an issue of marital fidelity." Hello. Julia wanted to ask more, but she had already hung up. Reasonable argument? Preliminary evidence? Julia clutched her phone, her heart sinking. What evidence had Caleb prepared? That picture? Could one picture be enough for a court to freeze her assets and lock her out of her home? The absurdity of it was overwhelming. Unwilling to give up, she dialed another number. This time, a male lawyer answered. "Hello, Mr. Davies? I need a consultation." She explained the situation again, this time trying to be more detailed, emphasizing that the photo was just a stupid party game with no substance. "So, Mr. Davies, what he did is illegal, right? He's maliciously hiding assets and filing a frivolous lawsuit. I can sue him for damages and get the freeze lifted, right?" Julia asked desperately, clinging to this last straw. On the other end, Mr. Davies paused before speaking, his tone cautious. "Ms. Vance, I understand the situation. Legally speaking, as long as your husband posted a bond and the court found his application met the legal requirements with preliminary evidence, the process itself is legal. Proving malice is extremely difficult. The burden of proof would be on you to show he acted with the specific intent to harm you and cause severe damages." He continued, regarding the photo, "Even though you say it was a game, it could be used as a contributing factor to argue irreconcilable differences or to suggest you might have a motive to hide assets in preparation for a divorce. In a judge's discretionary view, it's hard to say it would have zero impact. My advice for you right now is, 1. Immediately gather all evidence proving your income is legitimate and you had no intent to hide assets. 2. You have the right to file for a review of the restraining order within 5 days of receiving it, or you can post a counterbond to have the freeze lifted. 3. Start gathering information on your husband's assets for the potential divorce proceedings. As for suing him for damages, at this stage, the odds of winning are very low, and it will consume a great deal of your time and money." Mr. Davies's words were logical and clear, but they were like buckets of cold water, extinguishing the tiny flame of hope in Julia's heart. Process is legal? Burden of proof on me? The photo could have an impact? The unfamiliar legal terms made her head spin. She had less than $50 to her name. How could she possibly afford a lawyer, let alone post a counterbond? So what do I do now? I can't even go home. I might lose my job." Julia's voice broke with despair. "Ms. Vance, Mr. Davies said with a sigh of professional sympathy, "I'm sorry for what you're going through, but legal channels take time and money. For your immediate situation, perhaps you could try contacting a women's shelter or talk to your family, see if they can offer some temporary support." Family. The word was a key, unlocking a part of her mind she had deliberately ignored. She still had her parents. She wasn't completely alone. A new, fragile hope surged through her. Of course, why hadn't she thought of it? Mom and Dad, they wouldn't abandon her. Sure, they hadn't been thrilled when she married Caleb, thinking his family background was too ordinary, but she was their daughter. When they heard how she was being treated, they would surely help her. The thought was a candle in the darkness, giving her a flicker of strength. She thanked the lawyer, even though his advice felt like ice, and hung up. The sky outside was just beginning to lighten. She couldn't wait any longer. Chloe, Chloe. She shook her sleeping friend awake, her eyes alight with a desperate spark. Take me to my parents' house. Please, take me there now. Chloe, startled awake, saw the manic hope in Julia's eyes and understood immediately. Okay, let's go. The car sped through the light morning traffic. Julia's heart hammered against her ribs, half with hope, half with a deeper anxiety. She stared out the window, rehearsing what she would say. She had to emphasize Caleb's cruelty, the innocence of the photo, her complete desperation. Her parents would feel for her. They had to. An hour later, the car pulled up in front of her parents' house in a quiet, older suburban neighborhood. Julia took a deep breath, threw open the car door, and practically ran to the front door. Standing before the familiar door, she rang the bell, her heart pounding. The door opened quickly. It was her mother, Helen. She was in a housecoat, a spatula in her hand, obviously in the middle of making breakfast. Seeing Julia, haggard and with swollen red eyes, Helen first looked startled, then her brow furrowed. Julia, what are you doing here so early? Aunt, you look terrible. Mom. Seeing her mother, all the pent-up grief burst forth. Tears streamed down her face as she lunged forward for a hug. Mom, Caleb, he's not human. He's torturing me. He kicked me out. He froze my accounts and our condo. Mom, Before she could finish, her mother pushed her away, gently but firmly. Helen didn't wrap her in a comforting embrace as she always had. Instead, she took a step back, her eyes complex, her tone laced with a reprimand that chilled Julia to the bone. Slow down. What's with all the crying? Kick you out? Why? Did you do something to make Caleb angry again? Julia's sobs died in her throat, cut off as if by a physical blow. She looked at her mother in disbelief. Mom? I didn't do anything. It's him. He's lost his mind. All over a picture. A stupid picture from a party that everyone was egging on. That's why he did this to me, she pleaded, desperately searching her mother's face for a shred of trust or sympathy. Helen's frown deepened. Her eyes filled with disapproval and, was that embarrassment? She lowered her voice, her tone sharp. A picture? What picture? Julia, you're a married woman. You need to be more careful in public. Did you do something that could be misunderstood? Caleb is such a decent, stable man. Why would he get this angry? And take it to court? Do you know how embarrassing this is? Mom, Julia felt like she'd been struck by lightning. How can you say that? It was a game. I'm the victim here. Caleb is cruel and vicious. That's enough. Helen cut her off impatiently, glancing back into the house as if afraid of being overheard. Get inside. Don't stand here shouting for the whole neighborhood to hear. Julia was half pushed, half pulled into the house. In the living room, her father, Mark, was sitting on the sofa watching the morning news. He glanced up as she came in, his face grim, but said nothing. Dad, Julia said timidly. Mark grunted in response, his eyes fixed on the TV, though his mind was clearly elsewhere. Helen closed the door and led Julia to the far end of the sofa. She looked at her daughter's tear-streaked face, sighed, and softened her tone, but the words still stung. Julia, it's not that I'm trying to lecture you, but when you get married, you need to settle down and build a life. Caleb is a good man, stable job, responsible. You were the one who insisted on marrying him, and we accepted it. Now it's only been a year, and you're causing this kind of drama? It's gone to court? Do you have any idea? Your aunt called, the Hendersons from down the street called. Everyone's asking what's going on with our family. We're humiliated. Julia's heart sank into a cold, dark pit. She finally understood the embarrassment in her mother's eyes. It wasn't sympathy for her daughter's pain. It was shame that her daughter had disgraced them. In their eyes, Caleb's stability was more important than their own child's suffering. Mom, it was Caleb. She tried one last time. It doesn't matter who. Helen's voice rose, sharp and decisive. Couples fight all the time, but when you take it to court, freezing assets, seizing property, that means you've crossed the line. You must have done something wrong. The court wouldn't have just listened to Caleb if he didn't have a reason. What about this picture? Show it to me. What is this scandalous thing? Julia was frozen solid, her blood turning to ice. She looked at her mother's accusatory gaze, at her father silent, but clearly complicit profile. The last ember of hope died. Her family home, her supposed final refuge, wasn't a harbor. It was firing colder, sharper arrows at her. She didn't even have the picture. The number was anonymous. She'd never saved it. Caleb's phone was smashed. And even if she had it, would she dare show it? Under her mother's prejudiced scrutiny, any explanation would sound like a weak excuse. An immense despair and grief crushed her. She stood up abruptly, her body swaying from weakness and emotion. I don't have the picture. And you don't believe me anyway. Her voice was hoarse, imbued with a deadened calm. Fine, fine. I won't embarrass you anymore. Without another look at her parents' shocked and perhaps slightly panicked faces, she turned, wrenched open the door, and ran. Julia, stop! Her mother's shout followed her. Julia didn't hear it. She stumbled down the front steps. Chloe's car was still waiting. Seeing Julia run out, lost and tear-streaked, Chloe jumped out of the car to steady her. Jules, what happened? Your parents. Julia grabbed Chloe's arm, her nails digging into her flesh. She looked up, her face a mask of utter despair and a new, terrifying resolve. Her voice was a ragged scream. Chloe, drive. Take me to Connor Reed's house. Now, right now. The red Polo weaved through the afternoon traffic like an agitated fish. Chloe gripped the steering wheel, glancing worriedly at Julia in the passenger seat. Julia was curled into the seat, her face ashen, her eyes staring blankly at the blur of scenery outside. Only her hands, clenched so tightly her nails dug into her palms, betrayed the tempest of despair and reckless abandon raging inside her. Going to Connor Reed? Chloe's stomach was in knots. This was like drinking poison to quench a thirst. Julia was in a dangerous state, a string pulled so taut it was about to snap. Seeking out the man who was the very catalyst for this disaster? It would only make things worse, handing Caleb a sharper knife to twist. But looking at Julia's utterly broken expression, all of Chloe's arguments died in her throat. She knew Julia had been pushed to the edge of cliff. The closing of her parents' door was the final blow. Right now, Julia was desperate for a lifeline, even if that line led straight into a whirlpool. And Connor Reed was the only name in her chaotic mind that seemed connected to Caleb's monstrous actions. The car finally pulled into an upscale condo complex. Connor had done well for himself after college, starting a small tech firm. His place was in a much nicer part of town than the condo Julia shared with Caleb. Chloe parked, and Julia immediately pushed the door open, stumbling out and rushing toward the main entrance. Jules, wait, calm down, Chloe yelled, locking the car and hurrying after her. But Julia was already buzzing the intercom for Connor's unit, the insistent ringing echoing in the quiet lobby, each chime hammering on her frayed nerves. She stared at the dark wood of his front door, her chest heaving. The door opened. Connor stood there in a comfortable set of sweatpants and a t-shirt, his hair slightly messy, as if he'd just woken up from a nap. When he saw Julia, haggard, eyes swollen red, he blinked in surprise, then a smile, one Julia knew all too well, spread across his face. It was a mix of roguish charm and carefully veiled concern. Julia? His voice was pitched with the perfect amount of surprise and a hint of something that sounded like delight. What a surprise. What happened to you? Quick, come in. He stepped aside, his eyes flicking past her to Chloe, giving a curt nod of acknowledgement. Julia stumbled inside as if grabbing a lifeline. Connor's apartment was stylish, a modern minimalist design with expensive-looking details. The air smelled faintly of a musky men's cologne. But Julia didn't notice. She stood in the middle of the living room, turned to face him, and the tears started before she could speak. Connor, help me. Caleb is trying to destroy me. Her voice was broken, choked with despair, as she poured out the story of the last 3 days, being locked out, her money gone, the condo frozen, the lawyer's cold shoulders, her parents' rejection. Finally, she looked up at him, her eyes pleading. It was all because of that picture. From the reunion. Connor, that picture. Who took it? Who sent it to him? Do you know? Please help me. I have nothing left. You're the only one who can help me now. As she spoke, the smile on Connor's face faded, replaced by a grave expression. His brow furrowed, his eyes filled with shock and outrage. What? He raised his voice, his tone dripping with indignation. He did that to you. Over one stupid picture? That was just everyone messing around. We were all drunk. That Caleb, he looks like such a decent guy, but he's a vicious, cold-hearted bastard. He slammed his fist down on the arm of his expensive sofa. His reaction was like a fire in the dead of winter for Julia. The tiny flicker of hope she had flared into a bonfire. The tears came harder now, full of validation and a desperate need for an ally. Connor, you're the only one who understands. The only one who knows I'm innocent. He's framing me. You have to help me prove it. Help me explain it to him. Connor watched her, tear-streaked and utterly dependent on him, and a flicker of triumph crossed his eyes. He stepped forward and, in a completely natural motion, wrapped an arm around her trembling shoulders, a gesture of strong, protective comfort. Julia, don't be afraid. I'm here, he said, his voice low and powerful, full of hypnotic reassurance. Who the hell does Caleb Thorne think he is, treating you like this? Don't worry, I'll help you. That picture was a misunderstanding, and I'll go to him myself and explain everything. I refuse to believe he won't listen to reason. His warm hand on her shoulder, the unfamiliar yet close contact, made Julia stiffen for a second. A faint sense of unease pricked at her. But in that moment, abandoned by the world, the feeling was instantly drowned out by overwhelming gratitude and dependence. She was a drowning person clinging to a piece of driftwood. Instead of pulling away, she subconsciously leaned into him, drawing on the false warmth and support. Really? Connor, thank you. Thank you so much. She sobbed, her tears soaking the front of his shirt. Standing by the door, Chloe saw everything. Her heart sank. Connor's performance was too perfect, so perfect it felt rehearsed. The natural embrace, the well-timed anger, the confident promises. It all reeked of calculation and deceit. And the look in his eyes when Julia leaned on him. That fleeting flash of a predator watching its prey walk into a trap sent a chill down Chloe's spine. Julia, Chloe began, wanting to warn her. Right, Connor interrupted, as if he hadn't heard Chloe, suddenly remembering something. He gently guided Julia to stand on her own, his tone becoming serious. Julia, the most important thing right now is to find you a safe place to stay. You can't keep imposing on your friend. He glanced at Chloe with dismissive politeness before turning his full attention back to Julia, his gaze intense. Look, I have a small condo over by the lake. It's empty, nice area, good security. You can move in there for now. Stay as long as you need. Don't worry about money. Just think of it as a safe harbor I'm lending you until this all blows over. I couldn't. That's too much to ask. Julia hesitated. The offer was tempting, but some instinct told her it was wrong. Don't be ridiculous. Connor waved his hand dismissively. What are we? Old friends. I can't just stand by while you're being treated like this. It's settled. I'll text you the address and the key code right now. He immediately took out his phone. Julia's phone chimed. She looked at the screen, at the unfamiliar address and string of numbers. A mix of emotions churned inside her. Gratitude? Yes. Unease? Yes. But mostly, it was the feeling of having no other choice. She nodded, her voice barely a whisper. Then, thank you, Connor. The money. I'll find a way to pay you back. Don't mention it, Connor said with a generous smile. His eyes scanned Julia's pale, fragile face, and his tone shifted, becoming laced with a subtle, probing intimacy. But Julia, you know how crazy Caleb is right now. He's not going to back down, if you're staying at my place. Well, if he finds out, he'll probably make an even bigger scene, which would be worse for you. He paused deliberately, watching the panic flash across her face before he continued, his words heavy with implication. So, you staying there? It's best if we keep it a secret for now. Don't tell anyone. We can't give Caleb any ammunition to throw more mud at you, right? His eyes flickered meaningfully toward Chloe. Julia's heart seized. A secret? Not even tell Chloe? She instinctively looked at her friend, her expression torn with guilt. Chloe's heart went cold. This wasn't help. This was a hostile takeover. Connor was trying to completely isolate and control Julia. The subtext of his throwing mud comment was practically screaming at her. Seeing the grateful look on Julia's face, as if she were being saved by the very person selling her out, sent a surge of fury through Chloe. Julia, you can't go. Chloe couldn't hold back any longer. She rushed forward and grabbed Julia's arm. You have to see what he's. Chloe. Connor's voice turned sharp and commanding. He stepped between them, his tall frame exuding an intimidating pressure. This is between me and Julia. I appreciate you looking after her, but right now, I think she needs a safer, quieter environment. You don't want her to be hurt or provoked any further, do you? His gaze was like a dagger, aimed straight at Chloe. Chloe flinched, wanted to argue, but momentarily silenced by his forcefulness. Chloe. Julia closed her eyes in pain, caught between her loyal best friend and the man who was her only lifeline. Connor's words echoed in her head. Don't let Caleb find out. Don't give him any ammunition. It will only be worse. She bit her lip. When she opened her eyes, her look was pleading. Chloe, I'm sorry. I just need a place to go for a little while. Connor is just trying to help. I'll be careful. Chloe looked at the desperate plea in Julia's eyes, at the way she was already half sheltered by Connor's arm, and felt a crushing wave of powerlessness and anger. She knew nothing she could say would get through. Julia had been psychologically broken by Caleb's attacks, and Connor's help was the illusion she was clinging to. Fine, fine. Chloe's voice trembled with disappointment and exhaustion. You, just be careful. She gave Connor one last, hard look, full of warning, then turned and walked out, the door slamming shut behind her. The sound of the door closing hit Julia like a physical blow. She swayed, overcome with guilt and confusion. Julia, don't worry about it. Connor's voice was a soothing balm. His arm tightened around her shoulder, pulling her closer. Chloe's just worried about you. Come on, I'll drive you over. You need to get some rest. Julia nodded, dazed, and let Connor lead her out of the apartment, a place that felt more like a beautifully decorated trap than a home. As Connor drove toward the lake, a faint smile played on his lips. He tapped his fingers on the steering wheel, everything going exactly as planned. The prey was in the cage, isolated and helpless. He picked up his phone and quickly typed out a text. To C. T. The fish is in the net. Everything's going according to plan. Awaiting next steps. The lakeside condo was just as Connor had described, quiet, beautifully furnished, with a stunning view of the shimmering water. But Julia felt no sense of peace. It was a luxurious prison. Her pale reflection stared back at her from the floor-to-ceiling windows. The sprawling apartment was eerily silent, filled only with the sound of her own breathing. Connor had dropped her off, given her a quick tour, left her with some groceries and a little cash, and then hurried off, claiming he had urgent business at the office. Before he left, he'd repeated his warning. Julia, get some rest. Don't overthink things. I'll handle Caleb. Remember, don't contact anyone, especially not anyone connected to him. Don't want any complications. Wait for my call. The moment the door clicked shut, Julia slid to the floor, her back against it, staring at the cold, unfamiliar space, a fear even deeper than the one she'd felt at Chloe seized her. She felt like a carefully caged animal, waiting for an unknown fate. Connor's help, now that she was alone with it, tasted of control and calculation. Her phone was her only connection to the outside world. She didn't dare call Chloe, afraid of dragging her into this mess, afraid to see the disappointment in her friend's eyes. She didn't dare call her parents. That door was firmly closed. All she could do was obsessively scroll through job sites, sending out resumes, trying to grasp at some sliver of financial independence. Most of her applications vanished into a digital void. The few interview requests she received were for places and times that felt impossible to reach for someone without a car and trapped in this gilded cage. Days passed in an agony of waiting. There was no word from Connor. His promise to go talk to Caleb felt like an empty lie. Julia's heart sank lower and lower, a vine of anxiety tightening around it. One evening, as she was staring blankly at a particularly demanding job description on her laptop, her phone began to vibrate violently. Connor's name flashed on the screen. Her heart leaped. She lunged for the phone. Hello, Connor? What happened? Did you see Caleb? She asked, her voice trembling with nerves. But the voice that answered was not Connor's. It was a voice she knew intimately, a voice that now froze her blood. He didn't see me, Caleb said, his tone like a poison-tipped icicle stabbing straight through the receiver. But I saw all the interesting things on his phone. Julia's mind went blank with a deafening roar. Caleb? How was he calling from Connor's phone? Caleb? How? Where are you? She couldn't form a sentence, her throat tight with terror. How'd I get his phone? Caleb's voice was laced with a cruel amusement. That's not important. What's important, Julia, is how impressive you are. The second I kick you out, you jump right into your old flame's bed? Even got a new place to live? How's the gilded cage by the lake? Comfortable. Every word was a whip, lashing at her heart. He knew. He knew everything, even where she was living. No, Caleb, listen to me, she shrieked, tears blurring her vision. Connor felt sorry for me. He's just letting me stay here temporarily. Nothing happened. He was going to help me explain everything to you. Explain. Caleb let out a short, sharp laugh, full of absolute contempt. Explain it with the chat logs on his phone. The ones where you two are explaining things to each other. Julia's cries stopped dead. What? What chat logs? Playing dumb. Caleb's voice turned arctic. You two seem pretty cozy. Julia, don't be afraid. I'm here. That loser never deserved you. Once this is over, I'll take good care of you. TSK. So touching, so romantic. Julia, Your ability to move on is truly breathtaking." She felt like she'd been struck by lightning. Her body went cold, her blood turning to ice. Had she ever said those things to Connor? She hadn't. How could those chats be on his phone? "I didn't. Caleb, that's not real. It's fake." Connor must have. A horrifying realization hit her. She screamed. "Enough." Caleb cut her off, his voice dripping with disgust, as if her very words were filth. "Save your pathetic act. You and him, one a backstabbing slut, the other a shameless opportunist. You're perfect for each other. Did you really think Connor Reed was some knight in shining armor, helping you? He's just a stray dog who smelled blood in the water, looking to pick at the scraps." His words were a vicious curse, each one aimed to kill. "Caleb, you bastard. You set me up. I hope you rot in hell." The false accusations finally broke her. Despair and rage made her scream incoherently. On the other end, Caleb was silent for a moment. Then, with an almost gleeful, bone-chilling coldness, he delivered his final verdict. "I'll rot in hell? Julia, you should be more worried about yourself. And your devoted Mr. Reed. Did you really think his shady company books could withstand a little scrutiny? How do you think the IRS got tipped off?" Boom. Something exploded in Julia's mind. The IRS? Connor's company? "Caleb, what had he done?" "What? What did you do to Connor's company?" she stammered. "What did I do?" Caleb chuckled, a sound like a snake hissing. "I just helped the government clean up a bit of tax-evading trash." "Oh, and by the way," his voice dropped to a demonic whisper, "your dear lover Connor? He's probably a little busy dealing with an audit right now. Do you really think he has time for you? His worn-out second-hand toy?" "Caleb," Julia let out a piercing scream. The sheer force of her rage and terror made her whole body convulse. The line went dead. The dial tone was a final, merciless verdict. Julia stood there, the phone in her hand feeling like a white-hot piece of iron. She hurled it at the floor. It bounced, the screen shattering into a spiderweb of cracks. She collapsed, clawing at her hair, letting out a strangled, animalistic sob. It was all fake. Connor's concern was fake. His help was fake. Those chat logs were fake. And Caleb. He had woven a giant web, catching both her and Connor in it, just to watch them squirm. He wasn't just destroying her. He was using her to drag Connor down with him, to turn them against each other, to make them tear each other apart. She was the bait in his trap. And Connor, his situation right now. Julia's head shot up, her bloodshot eyes wild with a crazed energy. No, she couldn't just sit here and die. She had to find Connor. Even if he was using her, even if he was no better, they were in this together now. She had to know what Caleb did. She had to know what was happening to his company. She couldn't let him fall, or she would be truly, completely finished. She scrambled to her feet, rushed to the door, didn't even bother with shoes, and ran out. She was going to Connor's office. Right now. The evening rush hour had clogged the streets. Julia sat rigid in the back of a taxi, her posture as taut as a drawn bowstring, her nails digging crescents in her palms. The driver glanced at the pale, wild-eyed woman in his rearview mirror and wisely kept quiet, weaving through the traffic. Caleb's last words were like poison-tipped icicles, piercing her brain again and again. "Your dear lover, Connor? He's probably a little busy dealing with an audit. Do you really think he has time for you? His worn-out second-hand toy? Second-hand toy. Worn out. Busy. If Connor's company really went under, if Caleb destroyed him too, then Julia Vance would be nothing more than a fish on a cutting board, with no strength left to even flop." The taxi finally turned into the office park where Connor's company was located. Julia shoved a bill at the driver, without waiting for change, and bolted from the car. The lobby of the high-rise was bright, filled with professionals heading home. Julia was a dissonant ghost, making a beeline for the elevators. "Ma'am, can I help you? Do you have an appointment?" the receptionist asked, standing up, alarmed by Julia's frantic appearance. "I need to see Connor Reed, the CEO." Julia's voice was a hoarse rush. "Mr. Reed is..." The receptionist began, looking uneasy. "He's in an important meeting. He can't be..." "Get out of my way." Julia had no time for etiquette. She shoved the receptionist aside, like a cornered animal, and ran toward Connor's office. The receptionist's cry of surprise and the stares of onlookers were lost on her. Connor's office door was closed. She reached it, about to slam her fist against it, when a furious argument erupted from within, loud enough to pierce the heavy wood. "Connor, you son of a bitch, you explain this to me. What the hell is this hole in the books? $3 million. $3 million just vanished. You think I'm blind?" A rough, angry voice roared, punctuated by the sound of a fist slamming on a desk. Connor's voice followed, stripped of its usual calm, full of panic and bluster. "Mr. Henderson, Please calm down. Let me explain. It's a temporary cash flow problem. A clerical error. I can fix it, I promise. Right away. Clerical error, my ass. Henderson bellowed, his voice like a lion's roar. An error that just happened to move my money into one of your shell corporations. Connor, I was a fool to ever trust you. All that bullshit about investment potential. You're nothing but a goddamn con man. A parasite. No, Mr. Henderson, listen. Someone's setting me up. Someone messed with the books. It was Caleb Thorne. That's it. He's getting revenge on me. Connor's voice was wild with desperation, scrambling for a scapegoat. Caleb Thorne? I don't give a damn about some Caleb Thorne. Henderson shot back, his voice full of contempt. I care about my money, and I care about this contract. Connor, either you give me my $3 million back today with interest, or, well. The sound of something shattering filled the office, followed by Connor's terrified yelp and the sounds of scuffle. Outside the door, Julia stood frozen, as if a bucket of ice water had been dumped over her head. The argument was a series of hammer blows, shattering her last shred of hope. A $3 million hole? A shell corporation? A con man? Connor, he wasn't a successful entrepreneur. He was running a scam, maybe even stealing from his investors. And Caleb, he had expertly lanced the boil. He had used Connor's own greed and corruption against him, giving him just a gentle push to send him tumbling into the abyss. And Connor was in there, screaming, trying to blame Caleb for it, saying Caleb had doctored the books. Julia felt a chill shoot up her spine. Caleb was too smart for that. If he was going to make a move, it would be flawless, leaving Connor with no defense. Just like he had faked those chat logs between her and Connor. The office door was wrenched open. A burly, brutish-looking man with a thick gold chain around his neck stormed out, flanked by two equally menacing thugs. Henderson. He saw Julia standing there, catatonic, and his fierce eyes raked over her with disgust. He spat on the floor. Pathetic, he grunted before stalking off with his crew, leaving a trail of smoke and rage. Inside, Connor's office was a disaster. Papers were strewn everywhere. An expensive laptop lay with a shattered screen, and a crystal ashtray was in pieces on the floor. Connor himself was a wreck. His hair was a mess, his shirt was torn at the collar, and a bruise was already forming on his cheek. He was slumped in his chair, his face ashen, his eyes empty. When he saw Julia standing in the doorway, his vacant gaze first registered confusion, then ignited with a new emotion, the desperate, venomous rage of a cornered animal finding a scapegoat. You! He shot up from his chair, lunging toward her, his bloodshot eyes burning with a hatred that could have skinned her alive. Julia! You curse! You homewrecker! This is all because of you. If it wasn't for you, Caleb never would have come after me. He never would have destroyed my company. This is all your fault. He screamed, spit flying, his finger jabbing at her face. Julia stumbled back, her spine hitting the cold wall. Seeing the man who was once her lifeline, now transformed into a snarling beast, hearing his twisted accusations, the last of her illusions about him shattered. All that was left was a chilling absurdity. My fault. Julia's voice was eerily calm, laced with a bitter, twisted smile. Connor, when you were embezzling from your investors, was that my fault? When you were cooking the books, was that my fault too? You were already covered in shit. Caleb just smelled it and lit a match. And you have the nerve to blame me? Shut up. Her words hit their mark. Enraged, he swung his hand, and the slap echoed through the trashed office. Crack! Julia's head snapped to the side. Her cheek burned, and her ears rang. The blow shattered the last of her delusions, the last of her weakness. The pain shocked her into a cold, clear focus. A reckless, cornered animal ferocity began to bloom in her chest. She slowly turned her head back, flicking her tongue over her split lip, tasting the metallic tang of blood. She looked at Connor's face, distorted with rage, and she smiled. A bloody, crazed, venomous smile. Good one, she rasped, her voice like sandpaper. Connor, you and me, we're really in this together now. You're finished, and I'm not far behind. But Caleb, does he really think he's won? She took a step closer to him, her eyes set in her swollen face, burning like hellfire. He just wants to watch us tear each other apart, doesn't he? To watch us lose everything? Fine. Her voice rose, hysterical with a desire for mutual destruction. Let's give him a show. Your company's going down anyway, right? You owe millions? Then let's drag Caleb Thorne down with us. We have nothing left to lose. Don't you know some friends? Call them. Get him. Let him see what it feels like to have nothing, to be stomped into the dirt. Her words were a devil's whisper, igniting the same insane fire in Connor's eyes. He was finished. His career, his reputation, all destroyed by Caleb. If Caleb wouldn't let him live, then they would all die together. This bitch Julia was right. They had nothing to lose. The rage on Connor's face morphed into a grim, vicious resolve. He panted, his eyes like poison-tipped daggers, and stared at Julia. What do you want to do? Julia licked the blood from her lip, her smile twisting into something terrifying. He cares so much about his money, his respectable image, right? Then let's destroy what he cares about most. Let him taste what it's like to lose everything. Get someone. Trash his office. Burn his car. All his dirty little secrets. Let's air them all out. He has money. Let's make him broke. Let's make him beg on the street. The venom poured out of her. The cornered animal had finally bared its teeth, aiming straight for the hunter who had trapped it. Connor listened, the madness in his eyes growing. He fumbled for his phone, his fingers trembling, and scrolled frantically to a number saved without name. Yo, is this Spike? It's me, Connor Reed. His voice was rough, desperate, and vicious. I'm in deep shit, man. Because of this bastard named Caleb Thorne. He ruined my company. Spike, you gotta help me. I need you to mess him up. Mess him up bad. I'll pay you well. Yeah, and his office. His car. I want it all trashed. Burned. I want him finished. The voice on the other end rumbled. Connor covered the mouthpiece, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial hiss. The address? His company is at 12th floor, XX Tower on XX Road. Innovatech Solutions. And he lives at the Sterling Building 8, Unit 1502. Yeah, Spike, go hard. Don't hold back. Make sure he remembers this for the rest of his life. Julia listened, her heart hammering, a sick mix of terror and exhilarating vengeance coursing through her. Destroy Caleb. Destroy everything he has. It was the only thought keeping her upright. She leaned in close to Connor. And he really loves his black Audi A6. License plate XXXXXXX. Smash it. Connor immediately repeated the plate number into the phone. After he hung up, a strange silence fell over the office. The two of them, pushed to the brink, stood like gamblers who had lost everything, panting, their eyes wild. The air was thick with the stench of conspiracy and the twisted thrill of impending revenge. Just you wait, Julia, Connor gasped, a savage grin on his face. We're going to watch that bastard Caleb burn. Julia said nothing. She just clenched her fists, her nails digging deep in her palms again. The pain kept her lucid, kept her tuned to the beast of pure destruction she had just unleashed. She walked to the shattered window and looked out at the glittering city lights. Did you see that, Caleb? The game isn't over yet. A cornered rabbit will bite too, and it will bite to kill. The city was quiet now, shrouded in the deep silence of late night. Streetlights cast lonely yellow pools on the empty roads, stretching the shadows of the few late-night wanderers. XX Tower on XX Road stood like a silent giant against the dark sky. On the 12th floor, the glass doors of Innovatech Solutions were dark and locked. A few shadowy figures emerged from the fire escape, silent as ghosts. The leader was a burly man with a prominent scar across his face, Spike. A cigarette dangled from his lips, its red ember glowing in the dark as he scanned the area with a predatory gaze. This is the place? 12th floor Innovatech, Spike growled to his crew, a group of thugs armed with baseball bats and crowbars. Let's make this quick. Get inside. Smash anything that looks expensive. Computers, printers, desks. I want it all in pieces. The boss said to go all out. This one job will keep us comfortable for a while. You got it, Spike, his men muttered, eager for destruction. Spike took out a set of tools and skillfully began to work on the lock of the glass door. The metallic scraping sounded loud in the silence. The lock clicked open. Go, Spike hissed, pushing the door open and stepping inside. But the moment his foot crossed the threshold, freeze. Police, drop your weapons. Dozens of blindingly bright flashlight beams stabbed through the darkness from all directions, pinning the intruders in a cage of light. Simultaneously, the emergency lights on the entire floor flickered on, illuminating the office space as bright as day. The office wasn't empty. More than a dozen tactical officers in full gear were already there, crouched behind desks and file cabinets, their guns aimed squarely at the door. Leading them was Detective Miller, the same officer who had taken Caleb's initial report. His face was grim, his eyes sharp as a hawk's. Spike and his men froze, their bravado vaporizing into pure terror. They stood there, crowbars and bats in hand, looking utterly ridiculous and dangerously stupid under the aim of a dozen firearms. Hands behind your heads. Get down. Miller's voice boomed through the office. Shit. Spike's first instinct was to turn and run. Bang. A deafening explosion. Not a bullet, a flashbang grenade. A blinding white light and a massive sonic boom erupted in the doorway. Spike and his men screamed, clutching their eyes and ears as they lost their balance and collapsed in a heap. "Move in," Miller commanded. The tactical team swarmed them, swiftly pinning the disoriented thugs to the ground and slapping handcuffs on their wrists. "All suspects in custody," an officer reported. Miller walked over to the groaning Spike, crouched down, and looked at him coldly. "Frank Miller, aka Spike, right? Possession of illegal tools, conspiracy to commit vandalism, breaking and entering. You got a lot of nerve." Spike, still dizzy and deafened, heard the officer say his name and felt a fresh wave of terror. "Officer, it's a misunderstanding. We were just in the wrong place." "Wrong place?" Miller sneered. He took a phone from another officer. It was recording. "I guess this phone call was a mistake, too." He hit the speakerphone button. A man's voice, distorted with rage and fear, filled the office. It was Connor Reed's. "Spike, it's me, Connor Reed. I'm in deep shit, man. Because of this bastard named Caleb Thorne. He ruined my company. Spike, you gotta help me. I need you to mess him up. Mess him up bad. I'll pay you well." "In his office. His car. I want it all trashed. Burned. I want him finished." "The address?" "His company is at 12th floor, XX Tower on XX Road. Innovatech Solutions. And he lives at the Sterling, Building 8, Unit 1502. Yeah, Spike, go hard. Don't hold back." "The plate? Black Audi A6. License plate XXXXXXX. Smash it." The recording was crystal clear. Connor's venomous voice echoed through the silent office like a death knell. Spike's face went completely white. It was over. They were caught red-handed, with a recording of the man who hired them. An open and shut case. Connor Reed. Spike's eyes burned with the fury of being betrayed. He thrashed on the ground. "It was him. Connor Reed hired me. He paid me to do this. It was all him. Officer, I'll testify. He's an embezzler. He cooks his books. Quiet." Miller cut him off. "Save it for the station. Take him away." The thugs were hauled to their feet like sacks of garbage. Miller surveyed the scene. The only mess was from Spike's crew falling over themselves, and looked at the pristine office of Innovatech Solutions. A flicker of cold amusement crossed his face. He took out his own phone and made a call. "Mr. Thorne, Detective Miller. We have them. Caught in the act. Evidence is solid, including the recording of the solicitation. Your tip was accurate and timely. Appreciate the cooperation." On the other end, Caleb's calm, low voice replied, "Happy to help, Detective. It's a citizen's duty to cooperate with the police." Meanwhile, in the underground garage of the Sterling residential complex, the other crew sent to trash the car met a similar fate. They had just crept up to the black Audi A6 when undercover officers swarmed out of the darkness and tackled them to the ground. In a security office, the entire event was captured in crystal-clear detail on the surveillance monitors. The night deepened. In the elegant lakeside condo, Julia was curled up on the cold sofa, wide awake. She kept refreshing the local news on her phone, her heart pounding with a sick mix of anticipation and dread. The hours ticked by. Nothing. Suddenly, her phone shrieked. It was Connor's number. Her heart leaped in her throat. She snatched it up. "Hello, Connor? Did it work? Is it done?" The voice that answered was cold, familiar, and sounded like it was calling from hell itself. "Is what done, Julia? You'll have to be more specific." Caleb's voice was slow, taunting, like a cat playing with a mouse. "Are you talking about your friend, Mr. Reed's hired thugs, who are currently sitting in a holding cell, singing like canaries about how you two conspire to hire them? Or are you talking about Connor Reed himself, who was just arrested in his own home for embezzlement, conspiracy, and solicitation of a crime?" Boom! A lightning bolt detonated in Julia's brain. The blood rushed to her head, then drained away completely, leaving her cold and numb. She held the phone, but it felt like a block of ice, freezing her to her very soul. "No, impossible. You're lying." She screamed, her voice shrill and piercing. "Lying," Caleb scoffed, his laugh full of endless, cold mockery. "Julia, you and Connor. One of you is stupid, and the other is greedy. A perfect match. Did you really think your pathetic, desperate little plan could ever get past me?" He paused, each word a spike driving into her eardrums. "The things you said to him, egging him on?" He recorded the whole conversation. The wire transfer he sent to the thugs. "I have a copy of that, too. You two aren't going anywhere. Oh, and by the way," Caleb added, his voice becoming even more cruel, "I forgot to tell you. This condo you're in? It's registered in the name of a woman named Helen Miller. Guess who she is? Connor's distant cousin. A poor woman who's been living in a psychiatric hospital for years. How do you think it will look to the police when they find out you were squatting in a property he bought with stolen money in the name of a mentally incompetent relative? That's a whole other set of felonies, isn't it? Crash. Julia's world imploded. She crumpled to the floor. The phone slipped from her numb fingers, the screen shattering on the hard tile, its cracked face a perfect mirror of her own broken fate. Conspiracy. Solicitation to commit a felony. Money laundering. One charge after another, all backed by ironclad proof. Connor was finished, and so was she. Caleb. He knew everything. He had anticipated every move. He was a grandmaster, watching from above as they flailed in their traps, as they walked right into the snares he had so carefully laid. He hadn't just destroyed their lives. He was sending them straight to hell. Aha! A scream, so full of despair it was barely human, tore from her throat, echoing out across the silent lake before being swallowed by the infinite darkness of the night. The reinforced glass of the visitation room at the county jail was cold and hard, separating the inside from a world that no longer existed. Julia sat on a hard plastic stool, draped in a baggy orange jumpsuit. In just a few days, all the life had been drained from her. Her eyes were sunken, her face gaunt, her once vibrant gaze now a pair of dead pools staring at a sliver of gray sky. The cold, heavy steel of the handcuffs was a constant, brutal reminder of her new reality. Across from her sat her court-appointed lawyer, a serious-faced man with gold-rimmed glasses. A thick case file was open on the table in front of him. Ms. Vance? The lawyer's voice was flat, professionally detached. I've reviewed the entire case file and all the evidence related to your charges. Solicitation to commit assault against Caleb Thorne, conspiracy to destroy property, and conspiracy to conceal criminal proceeds. The situation is not good. Julia's eyes moved, slowly, to meet the lawyer's. There was no reaction, as if he were talking about someone else. The lawyer pushed his glasses up his nose. First, the prosecution has a clear audio recording recovered from Connor Reed's phone. On that recording, you can be heard instructing Mr. Reed to get someone, trash his office, burn his car, destroy what he cares about most, and make him broke. The language is inflammatory and shows clear criminal intent. An almost imperceptible tremor ran through Julia's body. The dead look in her eyes flickered with a spasm of pain. Those were the words she had screamed in Connor's office, blind with rage and despair, and he had recorded it all. Second, the lawyer continued, his tone unwavering. The phone calls for Mr. Reed to the hired hand, Frank Spike Miller, and the bank transfer record for the $2,000 deposit create an unbroken chain of evidence. After their arrest, Miller and his associates confessed in full, stating they were hired by Mr. Reed to harm Mr. Thorne and his property, and they identified you as being present during the planning. Finally, the lawyer turned a page, his voice growing heavier, regarding the concealment of assets. The lakeside condo where you were staying is registered to a Helen Miller. Our investigation confirms she is Mr. Reed's distant cousin, a long-term patient at the state psychiatric facility with a diagnosis of severe schizophrenia, rendering her legally incompetent. The D.S. office has traced the funds used to purchase that property back to company accounts that Mr. Reed illegally misappropriated. The prosecution has a very strong case that you and Mr. Reed conspired to use Ms. Miller's condition to purchase property in her name, with the intent to hide illegal gains and evade legal consequences. The lawyer closed the file and looked at Julia. There was a hint of pity behind his professional gaze. Based on this evidence, you're facing multiple felony charges. Conspiracy is treated as seriously as the completed crime. Given the strength of the evidence, if convicted on all counts, you're likely facing a sentence of 7 years or more. 7 years or more. The cold numbers were a branding iron on Julia's numb soul. She finally reacted, her chapped lips moving, a dry, broken sound escaping. Caleb, he. The lawyer understood. He nodded. Mr. Thorne, as the primary victim and key witness in this case, provided crucial information and evidence to the police. This included an anonymous tip about significant financial irregularities in Mr. Reed's company, which have since been partially verified, and a precise prediction of the time and location of your planned criminal acts, which was instrumental in the arrests. Legally, his actions fall under the umbrella of citizen cooperation and self-defense. Citizen cooperation. Self-defense. A twisted, horrifying smile stretched Julia's lips. Of course, the hunter hadn't just set the trap. He'd posted signs leading to it and called the game warden in advance. And Connor, she rasped. Mr. Reed's situation is far more severe. the lawyer said gravely. In addition to the charges he shares with you, he is also facing charges of embezzlement, misappropriation of funds, financial fraud, illegal business operations, and the solicitation charges. With all counts combined, his preliminary sentence estimate is 15 years to life. 15 years to life. Julia closed her eyes. Connor was done, utterly and completely. The man who had played the part of her savior, the man she had briefly considered an ally, was now at the bottom of an even deeper abyss. As for you, the lawyer's voice pulled her back. Right now, your most realistic strategy is to plead guilty and cooperate. We might be able to argue for a lesser role as an accomplice in the conspiracy and concealment charges, which could lead to a reduced sentence. But that would require you to provide a full and honest confession of everything that happened, including all the details of your arrangement with Mr. Reed. A full confession? Julia's eyes snapped open, and for the first time, they burned with an intense emotion, pure, unadulterated hatred. Hatred for Connor, and a deeper, bone-marrow hatred for Caleb. Plead guilty? Her voice shot up, sharp and hysterical. Guilty of what? It was Caleb. He's the one who pushed me to this. He set the whole trap and watched me walk into it. He's the monster. He's the criminal. Why aren't you arresting him? Why? She tried to stand, the handcuffs rattling. A female guard stepped forward and pressed her firmly back into the chair. Sit down. Calm down. Julia collapsed back, her chest heaving, gasping for air like a landed fish. Her bloodshot eyes were locked on the lawyer, filled with a defiant, venomous rage. The lawyer watched her, then sighed softly. Ms. Vance, the law requires evidence. Based on the evidence and legal procedures, Mr. Thorne has done nothing overtly illegal. Reporting a company for potential fraud is a citizen's right. Alerting the police to a potential threat against him is also his right. As for the choices you and Mr. Reed made, I'm sorry, but those were your own footsteps. Your own footsteps. Julia repeated the words to herself, a hollow whisper. The wild fury in her eyes slowly faded, replaced by a profound, bottomless despair. He was right. She had chosen this path. From the moment she'd agreed to play that stupid game, from the moment she'd been too afraid to be honest with Caleb, from the moment she'd run into Connor's arms, from the moment she'd screamed those venomous words in his office. Every step, though it felt forced by Caleb, was a step she had taken herself, deeper and deeper into the abyss. Outside, a cold rain began to fall. The visitation room was silent, save for Julia's suppressed, animalistic whimpers and the faint clinking of her handcuffs as her body trembled. The lawyer gathered his files and stood up. Ms. Vance, I understand this is difficult, but the legal process will move forward. I will do my best to secure the most favorable outcome for you. You should seriously consider the plea deal. He gave a slight nod and left. The heavy door closed behind him with a dull, final thud. Julia sat alone on the cold plastic stool, curled into herself as if to find some impossible warmth. The rain fell harder, a monotonous cold drumming against the glass. Her gaze drifted through the window, through the gray curtain of rain, to the world outside, a world that was cold, bleak, and no longer had a place for her. It was over. Her marriage, her home, her reputation, her freedom. Everything she had ever had was gone, ripped to shreds and ground to dust by the storm that had started with a stupid party game. And the man who had lit the match, who had watched her fall, Caleb. She didn't even know where he was or what he was doing. Was he sitting in his warm, untouched study, savoring his victory? Or was he still out there somewhere, his cold eyes watching her, his final sacrifice, desiccate in a cage? The hatred was still there, a toxic vine growing in her heart, but now it had nowhere to go. There was only an endless, cold void, like the rain outside, swallowing her whole. She had lost, completely and utterly. A single cold tear, mixed with the dried blood on her lip, slid silently down her cheek and fell onto the orange fabric of her jumpsuit, spreading into a small, dark stain of absolute despair.